The gavel slammed, a thunderclap that silenced the courtroom, but Officer Maya Jackson's heart roared louder. Accused of a crime she didn't commit, she stood alone, a black woman in a sea of judging eyes, her badge now a symbol of betrayal. Her loyal dog, Titan, whimpered at her feet, sensing the noose tightening around her life. In the small town of Fairview, Alabama, where whispers of prejudice lingered like fog, Maya had been a beacon of hope, a black police officer who rose through the ranks with grit and grace. But hope was a fragile thing in a place where old wounds festered. 2 months ago, a prominent white businessman, Charles Hargrove, was found dead in his mansion, a single bullet through his heart. The evidence pointed to Maya, her service weapon, her fingerprints, her patrol car seen nearby. The town, already divided, erupted. "Killer cop," they screamed at protests, their signs dripping with venom. The trial was a spectacle, a stage for Fairview's buried racism to take center stage. Maya, once a hero, was now a scapegoat, sentenced to death for a murder she swore she didn't commit. Titan, her German shepherd, was her only ally. He'd been with her since her first day on the force, his keen nose and fierce loyalty saving her in countless raids. Now, as she sat in her cell, the dog's restless pacing mirrored her own dread. The execution date loomed 7 days away. Her lawyer, a weary public defender named Sam Carter, believed her innocence but lacked the evidence to prove it. "We need a miracle, Maya," he'd said, his voice heavy with defeat. But miracles don't come cheap in Fairview. The night before her final appeal, Titan's behavior changed. He scratched at the cell's concrete floor, whining, his nose pressed to a crack in the wall. Maya, desperate for any distraction from her fate, humored him. She pried at the crack, revealing a hidden compartment, a rusted metal box stuffed with papers. Her hands trembled as she read, forged documents, bank records, and a letter implicating Hargrove in a corruption scheme with the town's elite. The letter, signed by an anonymous whistleblower, hinted at a cover-up, with Maya as the perfect fall guy. Her heart raced. This was no miracle, it was a lifeline. She smuggled the papers to Sam, who worked through the night to verify them. The documents exposed a network of bribes tying Hargrove to Fairview's mayor, Richard Ellison, and a local judge, Evelyn Cross. They'd framed Maya to protect their empire, banking on the town's racial tensions to seal her fate. But Titan's discovery wasn't enough. Sam needed hard proof to overturn the conviction. The clock was ticking, and Fairview's power players weren't about to let their secrets unravel. The next morning, Maya's appeal hearing was a battlefield. The courtroom buzzed with hostility, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Mayor Ellison sat in the front row, his smug grin a silent taunt. Judge Cross presided, her gavel a weapon of control. Sam presented the documents, his voice steady but urgent. "These papers prove a conspiracy to frame Officer Jackson," he declared, holding up the letter. The crowd gasped, but Cross dismissed it as hearsay. "Unsubstantiated," she snapped, her eyes cold. Maya's hope flickered, but Titan, allowed in the courtroom as her service dog, growled low, sensing the lie. The hearing spiraled into chaos when a protester lunged at Maya, screaming, "You don't belong here." Titan leaped, pinning the man to the ground, his barks echoing like a warning shot. The crowd erupted, some cheering for Maya, others hurling slurs. In that moment, Maya saw Fairview's soul laid bare, a town torn between its past and its potential for redemption. She stood tall, her voice cutting through the noise. "I swore to protect this town, and I won't stop, not even now." Her words hung heavy, a challenge to the guilty and a plea to the just. Sam seized the moment, demanding a recess to investigate the documents further. Reluctantly, Cross granted it, but not before Ellison whispered something to her, his face pale. Maya knew they'd come for her harder this time. That night, in her cell, she heard footsteps. 2 masked men slipped in, their knives gleaming. "You should have stayed quiet," one hissed. Titan lunged, teeth bared, driving them back. Maya fought too, her training kicking in despite her restraints. Guards arrived just in time, but the message was clear: the truth was a threat, and she was its keeper. The next day, Sam uncovered a lead. Hargrove's accountant, a nervous man named Paul Whitaker, had gone missing days after the murder. Sam tracked him to a rundown motel on Fairview's outskirts. Paul, pale and trembling, confessed everything. Hargrove had been skimming funds from city projects, and when he threatened to expose Ellison and Cross, they hired a hitman. Maya's gun was stolen from her locker, her prints planted. Paul had kept records' digital backups hidden on a flash drive. "I didn't want her to die for this," he whispered, handing over the drive. With the new evidence, Sam stormed into court, the flash drive his weapon. The room fell silent as he played a recorded conversation between Ellison and the hitman, detailing the frame-up. Maya watched as Ellison's smugness crumbled, his hands shaking. Cross tried to adjourn, but the crowd, now smelling blood, demanded justice. "Let her speak," someone shouted, a black teenager from the back, her eyes fierce with hope. Maya took the stand, her voice raw but unwavering. "I've served this town with everything I have. You can take my badge, my freedom, but not my truth." The tide turned. The crowd, once divided, began to chant her name. Cross, cornered, ordered a retrial. Ellison was arrested on the spot, his empire collapsing under the weight of his lies. Maya walked out of the courthouse, Titan at her side, into a sunrise that felt like a promise. Fairview wasn't Heledricism's roots ran deep, but for the first time, Maya saw cracks in its foundation. She'd fought not just for her life but for a truth that could change her town. As she knelt to hug Titan, the dog who'd saved her, she whispered, "We did it, boy." The crowd watched, some in awe, others in shame. Maya Jackson wasn't just a cop, she was a mirror, forcing Fairview to face itself. And in that reflection, there was hope. The courthouse steps felt like a battlefield as Maya Jackson walked into the dawn, Titan's steady presence grounding her. The crowd parted, some faces softened with guilt, others hardened with resentment. Fairview, Alabama, was a town split open, its scars exposed by the trial that had nearly taken her life. Maya's exoneration was a victory, but it wasn't absolution, not for her, not for Fairview. The truth had saved her from the death penalty, but it couldn't erase the months of hate, the slurs painted on her locker, or the nights she'd spent in a cell wondering if justice was just a word. She clutched the flash drive, the digital lifeline Paul Whitaker had given Sam, and vowed to keep fighting. Titan, her German shepherd, nudged her hand, his eyes sharp with the same resolve. The weeks that followed were a storm. Mayor Ellison's arrest sent shockwaves through Fairview's elite. Judge Cross resigned in disgrace, her name tied to the corruption scheme that had framed Maya. The local paper, once quick to vilify her, now ran headlines about the hero cop and her dog. But Maya didn't feel like a hero. She felt like a survivor, battered but unbowed, tasked with rebuilding trust in a town that had betrayed her. Her badge, returned after the retrial, sat heavy on her chest. Could she wear it again, knowing what Fairview was capable of? The police station was a microcosm of the town's divide. Some colleagues welcomed her back, their apologies clumsy but sincere. Others, like Officer Greg Tanner, a veteran with a history of old-school views, avoided her gaze. "You stirred up a mess, Jackson," he muttered one day, tossing a report on her desk. Maya met his eyes, unflinching. "The mess was here before me, Greg. I just turned on the light." Titan, lying by her desk, growled softly, sensing the tension. She patted his head, grounding herself. The station needed her, but it also needed to change. Fairview's community was no less fractured. Protests continued, though their tone shifted. Where once signs had called for Maya's execution, now they demanded accountability, some for Ellison's cronies, others for the systemic bias that had made Maya's framing so easy. A local activist group, led by the teenager who'd shouted for Maya in court, invited her to speak at a town hall. Her name was Aisha, a 17-year-old with a fire in her eyes that reminded Maya of herself. "We need you, Officer Jackson," Aisha said. "Not just your story, but your fight." Maya hesitated. Speaking out meant reopening wounds, but silence meant letting them fester. The town hall was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Maya stood at the podium, Titan at her side, his presence a quiet strength. She didn't sugarcoat her words. "I loved this town," she began, her voice steady but raw. "I swore to protect it, even when it turned on me. But love doesn't mean ignoring the truth. Fairview's got a problem: racism, corruption, fear of change. We can't fix it by pretending it's not there." The crowd was silent, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Aisha, in the front row, gave her a small, fierce smile. Then came the questions. A white retiree stood, his voice shaking. "I didn't want to believe you were guilty, but the evidence, it was convincing. How do we trust again?" Maya leaned forward, her hands gripping the podium. "Trust starts with listening. Not just to me, but to everyone this town's ignored." Another voice, sharper, cut through: a man in a trucker hat, his face red. "You're making it about race. This was about a bad cop, not color." The room tensed, murmurs rising. Titan's ears perked, but Maya held her ground. "It's always been about race when a black woman's life is worth less than a lie. You don't have to agree, but you have to hear me." The man sat down, his jaw tight, but the room didn't erupt. It listened. The town hall sparked something. Aisha's group organized community forums, and Maya, against her instincts to retreat, attended every one. She didn't just speak, she listened. To the black families who'd faced profiling, to the white residents who felt accused, to the officers caught between loyalty and reform. Titan was her shadow, his calm presence disarming even the angriest voices. Slowly, painfully, Fairview began to talk. Not everyone agreed, but they showed up. That was a start. Yet the fight wasn't over. Ellison's trial loomed, and whispers of retaliation grew louder. One night, Maya's patrol car was vandalized, "Traitor" scrawled in red paint across the hood. She stared at it, her stomach twisting, but Titan's low whine pulled her back. "We've been through worse, boy," she said, scrubbing the paint herself. The next day, Aisha and a dozen volunteers showed up to help, their laughter louder than the hate. Maya realized then, she wasn't alone anymore. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Paul Whitaker, the accountant, agreed to testify against Ellison, but only if Maya met him first. She found him in a diner, his hands trembling around a coffee mug. "I'm scared," he admitted. "They'll come for me like they did for you." Maya nodded, her own fear a familiar weight. "You're doing the right thing, Paul. That's what matters." Titan rested his head on Paul's knee, and the man smiled faintly. "Your dog's got better instincts than most people." Paul's testimony, backed by the flash drive, was damning. Ellison was convicted, sentenced to life for conspiracy and murder. The town exhaled, but Maya knew justice wasn't a gavel's fall, it was a process. She took a leave from the force, not to quit but to heal. She and Titan walked Fairview's backroads, where cotton fields met crumbling sidewalks. She thought of her father, a janitor who'd taught her pride in the face of scorn. "You don't just survive, Maya," he'd said. "You shine." She was trying. Aisha invited her to mentor at a youth center, and Maya found purpose there, teaching kids like her black, brown, overlooked to believe in their own light. Titan, ever loyal, became the center's unofficial mascot, his wagging tail a bridge between wary kids and a world that hadn't always been kind. One evening, as Maya locked up the center, a man approached Greg Tanner, the skeptical officer. His face was softer, uncertain. "I was wrong about you," he said, eyes on the ground. "I didn't see its bias, the system. I'm trying to now." Maya studied him, then nodded. "Keep trying, Greg. That's all any of us can do." Titan nudged Greg's hand, and for the first time, the man smiled. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was progress. Fairview didn't transform overnight. Prejudice lingered in quiet corners, in muttered words, in averted glances. But there were changes, a new police chief who prioritized training, a community board to oversee complaints, and Aisha's group, now a non-profit, pushing for equity. Maya returned to the force, her badge no longer a burden but a challenge. She patrolled with Titan, their partnership a symbol of resilience. The town began to see her not as a black cop, but as Maya, flawed, fierce, human. On the anniversary of her exoneration, Fairview held a festival, a tentative step toward unity. Maya spoke, her voice carrying over the crowd. "We're not perfect, but we're here. Together. That's where justice starts, not in a courtroom, but in us." Titan barked, and the crowd laughed, a sound of release. As she stepped down, Aisha hugged her, whispering, "You're my hero." Maya smiled, her eyes wet. "No, kid. We're each other's." The festival ended with a bonfire, its light flickering over faces of every shade. Maya watched, Titan at her side, and felt something new, hope, fragile but real. Fairview was no utopia, but it was trying. And so was she. What do you think? Where does justice begin, and how do we heal a divided community?